Alrighty, welcome guys. I am so excited for tonight. We have just kicked off round 6, if you can believe it, of our TTRG run crew. And this round is slightly different because we have some people doing the 10-kilometer version and some people have opted for the 5K version. But regardless, the power in this program is everybody coming online and just sharing their progress. Yeah. Even, when things don't go to plan, we talk that out. We talk about the challenges, we talk about the obstacles, and each week we just see each other, come back and just do what we can. And it's just this beautiful, powerful container for us all to just kind of stretch ourselves and see what we can achieve in 10 weeks. This round, though, I've brought in the big guns to help me. One of the things that I was mindful of in the last programs is that I spend a lot of time in our online group talking about the mindset that we need to cultivate in order to be a person that can set and achieve goals. I talk about holding integrity within yourself, building self-respect, and following through. And I was really mindful that week after week, I was pushing everybody to just keep showing up, to just keep going, to just put one foot in front of the other. And I was really, really mindful, I suppose, that, sorry, I'm just changing the view, really mindful that, it's not always the best thing to be pushing if your body needs a break and it needs a rest. And I was just mindful that in my desire to help people push themselves out of their comfort zones, there was a part of me that thought, I don't want it to become a disservice to them to be pushing them out of their comfort zones if their body is really requiring rest. And so I have been so excited to be able to collaborate with Pat from MOVEPOD, who is just wonderful. I'm going to let Pat introduce himself, but Pat is a podiatrist, and more than that, he is passionate about running as well. So one of the things that we're introducing in this running program is a weekly checklist that Pat has put together for us that you'll be able to use to check in with the way that your body is responding and the feedback that your body is responding, is giving you each week as you run. So I'm going to share that in the group this week. I didn't want to overwhelm you guys with everything in the first few days. And Pat tonight is going to just talk us through everything you need to know. Because I think, well, probably not everything. That's a big ask, isn't it, Pat? But, what you need to know at the beginning of a running journey, because I think for so many of us, we set the goal to run further. And whether you're running the 5K or the 10K, ultimately we're challenging ourselves to start running and start moving. And we're putting a lot of stress on our body in a way that we really don't have much background in understanding what's safe, what's not, how can I avoid injury? So that is what tonight is going to be. So I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to hand over to Pat. So Pat, what I'm going to do is make you a host, and then you're going to screen share for me. Hold on. Beautiful. You should be able to screen share. If I pin you.
Yep.
See how we go. Beautiful. Guys, can you give me a thumbs up if you can see Pat's screen? Beautiful. Give me another thumbs up if you can see Pat's face as well, because I want to make sure that you can see him. Beautiful. All right. Let's get rid of us, shall we? So you can all hide. We'll just see Pat. Off you go, Pat.
Alrighty, all good to go. So yeah, thanks, Lena, and thanks for having me on tonight and chatting all things running. So I suppose to give you guys a little bit of a background into myself, as Lena said, I'm a podiatrist, kind of work in the musculoskeletal sports podiatry space. Have a bit of a background as a running coach and a runner myself, and a little bit of work in things like strength and conditioning. So it all kind of ties in nicely into working with people with their injuries, and then not only just getting them back to, I suppose, their baseline, but then kind of going beyond the baseline and getting you injury-proofing you for the future. So that's a little bit about what I do. So in terms of I suppose, the beginner's guide to running that we're going to be going through tonight, what I've done is I've highlighted pretty much the key 4 or 5 areas that I see most commonly causing injury in new runners. And we'll go through those kind of key 4 or 5 areas and look at how you can impact those areas to reduce the risk of running injuries. Alrighty, so let's get started. And as Lynn said, if you got any questions, just fire them into the chat, because I want this to be as interactive as possible. I don't want to be sitting here just talking at you. So any questions, just fire them through. So before you get started with your running, has everyone, give me a thumbs up, has everyone already started their running, or are you about to start? Yep, cool, excellent. So whether you're at the start or you haven't started at all before, one of the key pieces of equipment that you're going to need is a good pair of running shoes. It's certainly an area that we see people fall down in before they've even started. They'll grab an old pair of Dunlop Volleys or a pair of Nike Frees that they've been wearing to the gym for 3 or 4 years. And yeah, kind of within a few weeks, you're in my room with an appointment for an injury. So that is your number one piece of equipment when you're starting, a good pair of running shoes. The second key point is, are you strong enough to undertake this running plan, or any running plan for that matter? And we'll go through some of those strength areas tonight. And there's just a few key little strength tests that you can do yourself. And it's absolutely fine if you can't, if you don't pass them, or if you can't necessarily do them, but it's just giving you a bit of an insight into the level of strength that you need to run, and working on that whilst you're building up your running capacity. And then also a warm-up routine, and the same goes for a cool-down routine and your recovery as well. So you definitely need a good warm-up, cool-down and recovery routine to make sure that you stay out there injury-free. So first thing we'll go through is your shoes, and I suppose asking yourself whether your current shoes are okay and whether you can actually continue to use those shoes as you commence this running plan. So generally the rule is like 500 to 800 Ks is the general kind of lifespan of a running shoe. But there's variations in that. There's certain shoes that will only last 100 Ks. There's other shoes that will last 1,000 Ks. I suppose the key thing here is everyone underestimates the amount of Ks that they cover in a shoe. Like you'll have a shoe for 6 months, and even if you're just walking around in it daily, you'll comfortably cover 500-600 Ks in it before you've even run in it. So have a bit of a think about how many steps do you do a day, and then how often you're wearing the shoes that you're planning to run in. And then just do a bit of a calculation across how long you've had that pair of shoes, how many steps you do per day, and then you can get a rough idea of how many Ks that they've seen going about a metre per step. So definitely have a look at that before you go and choose that pair of shoes to kickstart your running. The next thing is, does the shoe type suit your running goals? So this kind of goes back to what we were talking about with the gym shoes. And having a really flat gym shoe is fantastic in the gym so that you feel really grounded, but it might not necessarily be the best thing for your running. There's some people that do run in barefoot shoes and things like that, but it takes a mountain of training your feet and your lower limb to actually be able to tolerate running barefoot or running in a barefoot shoe. So it's a big ask of your body to then go and do that straight off the bat. So you want to make sure that you're in the right type of shoe, and running shoes vary quite a lot. So a key thing would be making sure that you go to a really good running shoe store to purchase your shoes. So there's a couple around Geelong and Ocean Grove that they have treadmills in the shoe store where you can actually go and try 4 or 5 pairs of shoes that suit your foot type, and you can go for a bit of a walk and a run in those shoes before you purchase them. And then that kind of brings us to that last point, is the shoe well fitted. So if you go into one of these stores, you're going to know that it's well fitted because you're going to be fitted up to it nicely, and then you're going to be able to go for a run in it, so you'll get a feel for that. Depending on how far you're running, you want a little bit of extra space in the end of the shoe. You need to remember that feet swell and they increase in length and width as you spend more time on them. So having a really tight fitted shoe won't necessarily be the best thing for you when you're at the end of your, whatever it is, 10K run, 5K run. So just make sure that you have those things in mind when you're purchasing the shoe. Any questions on that one from anyone?
Does price of shoe generally dictate quality of shoe? Is that always true?
Not always, no. There's some really good shoes that are, they sit in the low 100s. I suppose that's generally ones that are on sale from the previous season, but no, not necessarily. Like there's some shoes out there that cost $300 and they're not necessarily going to suit everyone. So it's more just finding what suits you and your needs and your foot type, and the almost forgetting about the cost and just finding what works best for you. Yeah.
In an ideal world, Pat, if you are someone who does some running outdoors and some running on a treadmill, do you need two different pairs of shoes for those two styles of running?
In the early stages, no. You could get away with one. As you start to creep up your running a little bit more, I tend to encourage people to have 2 or 3 pairs of shoes that they cycle between for their running. So they would have a shoe that they would do their fartlek / speed sessions in, and they would have a shoe that they'll do their slow, longer runs in. And then you might have like a racing shoe or a short track session shoe, something like that. But in the early stages, you'll get away with one, just a really good all-rounder that takes you on your long runs, your slow, easy runs, as well as your fartlek sessions. There's heaps of good options out there. You just need to go and try a few on.
One more shoe-related question.
Yes.
If you find a style of shoe that suits you, is that the shoe that you can wear for the next 10 years, or are your needs going to change like frequently?
Yeah, absolutely. Your needs change and the shoe changes. They are regularly changing shoe models. I think Nike is the perfect example of this. They will never leave a model the same year after year. Some of your old reliables like Asics have left some of their shoe models the same for about 15 years, just slight adjustments and lighter materials and things like that. But even them, like the Asics have kind of drifted more into the lighter weight running shoe variety. So they're even starting to drift away from some of their older styles. So the shoe model changes and you change a lot because you're constantly adding strength, stability, running capabilities to your body as you progress. So with that, you won't need as much of a shoe as you get better and as you progress with your running. So the better you get, you could probably dial back the thickness, the weight, all that sort of thing of your shoe because you don't need as much stability and support. Cool. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. A little bit more on shoes. So this is kind of when you're in the shoe store and selecting them. So they've got all these sorts of shoes like stability, motion control shoes, neutral shoes, all that sort of stuff. And they went and researched all these types of shoes and they lined them up with injury prevention and tried to find shoe characteristics that prevented injuries. And the only 2 characteristics of a shoe that they found to help in preventing injury were the most comfortable shoe and the shoe that allowed you to basically move through your natural movement pathway. So when you're in store and picking a shoe, forget about how it looks, go by how it feels. So it's always how it feels, just comfort-wise. Forget about all the little bells and whistles that they try and sell you on with this one has stability control, this one has this or that. It really doesn't matter in the end. The thing that's going to reduce your risk of injury is you just picking the absolute most comfortable shoe of the lot. Cool. So next up we got the strengthening. So the question that I asked at the start was, are you strong enough to be doing this running program or any running program? And the question that I regularly ask people is, are you stronger than the running you're doing? So a lot of people will run and try to be strong enough to keep up with their running, but it should be the other way around. You should always be stronger than the running that you're doing. So progress your strength and then progress your running. So some baseline tests that I like to use for people are these 4 ones here. So a single leg calf raise, a single leg squat, or a single leg sit to stand is pretty much the same thing. I'll show you a picture in a second. A single leg glute bridge and a standing hip hitch. So those are the rep sort of ranges that I like to get people striving for as a bit of a baseline. And that's, for example, the single leg calf raise, that's 30 well-controlled single leg calf raise reps. And at 30, you should be a little bit fatigued, but you should probably be able to go a couple more beyond that. So it's a benchmark that a lot of people don't have at the start. And if you think about calf raises, you're completing 30 single leg calf raises, but when you go out for a run, a 5K run, you're doing 2,500 calf raises on that leg in about a 30-minute period. So for you to be able to do 30 single leg calf raises is a reasonable expectation and ask if you're going to then go out and run 5K. So up to you guys. Does anyone want to trial a few of these out and see how they go with them?
Let's do it. I see a few hands coming. Let's go. Let's see us.
So let's go.
Those rep ranges seem quite high. Like, I'm a little bit shocked at the rep ranges, to be honest.
Yeah. So I'd rarely train someone in that rep range in terms of actually doing the strengthening exercises.
Yeah.
But if you've got the strength there, and you're running, you'll find that the endurance comes with it.
Makes complete sense. Yeah.
So as people get better at running and they're doing more of it, I even aim for like 50 on the single leg calf raise.
Yeah.
How are we going, guys?
Single leg squats. Yeah, we train for that, Catherine, you know.
I'm just going to get the chat up.
And so you said, just to clarify, it's like, you will still be feeling it. It should be a little bit of fatigue, but there's no pain and you can get through the reps.
Yeah, the main thing is you don't want to hit that 30 and like collapse. Like, you want it to be, you're strong enough to still control yourself in that range.
Yeah.
But it should be a struggle. Like, when you're doing those calf raises, you'll feel the calves kind of borderline cramping when you get up into those higher ranges.
I think it's fantastic because I think most people think about cardiovascular fitness in terms of approaching running with confidence, and this is just a little bit of a mindset shift. Yeah,
for sure. And it's you'll notice the stronger you are on all these single leg exercises, the less fatigued you're going to become later in a run, and then you'll find that your aerobic, it'll seem like your aerobic fitness has increased, but it's purely just your muscles not fatiguing later in a run. So yeah, just being able to harness that power and strength late in a run is awesome. Any questions, guys? Anything there you're unsure about, or no? We're all good. Cool. So I'd encourage everyone, does anyone want to take a screenshot of that so they can maybe tomorrow morning or some stage in the next couple of days run through a bit of a full strength test of themselves? Beautiful. We're all good to go?
Can you just talk through what the standing hip hitch is? I think that's the one that might confuse people.
Yeah, absolutely. So the standing hip hitch is one foot on a step and then the other foot floating off the step. And it's really it's kind of a lateral glute exercise. So as we run, those hips are wanting to basically, or the pelvis is wanting to tilt side to side. the muscles that surround the hips and the lower back stabilize that area so that we can stay nice and stable through here and produce all the power through the legs. So this one is basically testing the strength of the glute muscle and the other muscles around the hip and lower back to be able to hitch up the pelvis. So you'll basically drop your foot down below the step, and then you'll use the muscles of the standing hip to hitch it back up, and then dropping down slowly and hitching back up. Does that make sense?
Beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. So what you'd want to try and avoid is feeling of like pinching in the lower back. If you're trying to hitch too high or you're not engaging the glute really well, you'll tend to feel the lower back pinching, and that'll just be all those muscles in the lower back trying to take over and engage too much. So that's probably one of the most difficult technique-wise. So just have a play around with it yourself, and if you have any questions or you want to film yourself, shoot it through to Lena. She can send it on to me and I can send you some stuff back. Cool. Alrighty, so this is what I was talking about before. So what if I didn't pass the strength test? So not the end of the world, obviously, you can keep running, but it just means that you need to highlight this area as a little bit of a weakness and work on it yourself. As you build up your running, you also need to build up your strength. So as I wrote up the top there, you kind of need to think of yourself as an athlete, almost like a professional athlete, because athletes don't just run, they work on all aspects of their body, and that's strength, mobility, recovery, their mind. They think of all these areas and they think of themselves as a holistic athlete as opposed to just a runner. So if you think of yourself that way, then you'll find yourself putting in a lot more effort into these other areas other than just running, and you'll get so much more out of it. You'll reduce your risk of injury, and you'll probably end up enjoying it a hell of a lot more and doing it for longer. So definitely think of yourself as a holistic athlete. So some signs that your body isn't strong enough and you need to work on these areas a little bit more would be pulling up sore after runs, which is pretty normal after some runs. But if you're consistently pulling up really sore and then you're sometimes carrying that stiffness through an extra 1 or 2 days, it's just and it might even be you pulling up sore in the same areas every time. It's just your body highlighting for you that it's not strong enough or not resilient enough to tolerate what you're asking of it at that point in time. So you need to take that feedback from your body and work on that area, build that strength, build the resilience within your body to tolerate more. And I'm sure that's something that you could take to Lena, and you could talk about injury proofing certain areas by strengthening. So just make sure that you're, more than anything in those situations, you're actually listening to your body. Any questions?
No, I think that's good.
Cool. Alrighty, so running analysis. So this is just to give you guys a bit of an idea of what we look at in the clinic when we're assessing someone's running technique. And when we're doing it as part of an injury assessment, we'll always, I suppose, we'll do a holistic running assessment, but we'll look into a few key areas based on what the injury is. In general, there's a few key areas that we look at. One of them is body posture and positioning. So when we're running, we want to see the body leaning forward, but from the ankles and not too much flexing at the hips. So you don't want to see that whole trunk leaning forward. We look at your step rate, how often you're turning your feet over. So that has a role to play in the amount of force that we produce with each step, or the amount of force that we receive from each step. The higher, in general terms, the higher the cadence when it sits around that 180 steps per minute, we tend to get less force moving through our body with each step. So it's just a little bit nicer around our body when we're taking more frequent steps. Knee and ankle angles on the landing position. This tells us a lot about the force that we're receiving. Hip angle on push off tells us a lot about the muscles that are engaging and whether there's any restrictions in any of these joints. And then things like side-to-side imbalances that can cause overload. So I suppose looking things like I was talking about before with the hips. So sometimes someone will be a little bit weaker on one glute, and because of that, they'll get significant drop on one hip every time they land. But then when the other foot lands, it's pretty stable. So those sorts of imbalances are important to pick up, because again, we can just highlight those areas and then work on them from a strength point of view and injury proof that body part and other body parts for that matter. So that's that. I just wanted to give you an idea of what we looked at, but in terms of yourselves and when you are running yourselves, I don't want you to be overly thinking about what you look like, or trying to kind of see a reflection of yourself and change your running technique because of that. I'd prefer you to feel how you're running. So some of the key things that I try to get people to think about when they're running is being light on their feet, having a good posture, and a relaxed arm swing. So those are three pretty simple things that won't go and overthrow your running technique with overthinking, but they're all positive actions that will have a positive impact on your running. I'll show you some cues on the next slide of how you can work on that stuff. So for the staying light on your feet, a cue that I like to give people is sound is energy. So what that means is if you're hearing a really heavy footstep every time you're landing, then you're wasting a lot of energy. And it also means that you're receiving a lot of force. So if you think sound is energy, think of a really quiet footstep. It means you're using less force and you're receiving less force. So a good way to change that is work on shorter, sharper, pitter-patter type steps instead of those long, outreaching strides. So a lot of people will think to run efficiently, you need to take a really long stride because you'll get there faster with a longer stride. But it's more efficient and more effective to take shorter strides more frequently, and a lot nicer on your body as well. So the good posture, run tall and proud is a good way to think of it. So think about chin up, chest up, and running with confidence. So almost running around like you're a little bit too confident, a little bit cocky in yourself, and you think you look pretty good running around the streets. So if you're thinking that of yourself, then you're going to be running with your chin up, your chest up, and your eyes are going to be up at a good level. If you're running around kind of thinking that you're no good at running, or you don't look any good, or people are talking about you, that sort of mindset, then you're going to be running around slouched with your head down and looking at your feet, and that's not what we want from a running technique point of view.
Pat, before you move on to the next point, we've just had a question about the way your foot should be hitting the pavement when you're running. So I suppose in thinking about having lighter feet, we kind of all naturally imagine ourselves like tiptoeing along on the ground. And so the question is, are we still trying to hit the ground with our heel as we run when we're doing those shorter steps?
I don't like to change too much about how a person strikes the ground. So heel, midfoot, and when I say midfoot, I mean kind of the whole foot hitting at the same time. So heel, midfoot, forefoot, whatever comes most naturally to you is best. We're better off changing these other things, like changing the force that we're hitting the ground with. So staying lighter on our feet, running with tall posture, relaxed arm swing, all these sorts of things will lead to more efficient running technique, which without having to think, I need to land on my forefoot. So if I was to tell someone to land on their forefoot, they still might overstride and land in front of their body, but they might also be landing on their forefoot, which will create other issues. So we're better off changing other things around our technique that then have flow-on effects to efficient running, as opposed to being really tuned into where on the foot we land on.
Beautiful, thank you.
So the next one is relaxed arm swing. A lot of people get really tight through the shoulders when they run. I don't know if anyone else gets that feeling of a lot of tension up around the neck and shoulders after a run or during a run. But it's something that we want to try and phase out of our running. We're wasting energy when we're doing that. So to think about having a really relaxed arm swing, I always tell people to pretend like they're holding 2 potato chips between their fingers and they're not allowed to break them. The other thing that you can do is have your hands, can everyone see my screen? Yeah, so have your hands like this, and pretend like you've got two little birds in your hands, and you're not allowed to squish them. So having the hands really relaxed, you want them to be firm enough that they're not going to escape, but not so firm that you're squishing them in your hands. So having relaxed hands will then lead into the shoulders and the arms relaxing and flowing through nice and easily.
So running, holding our phone or an iPod or something like that is a big no-no?
Yeah, and I noticed that with a lot of people, the hand that they hold it in, that shoulder will be really tight and seized up. They'll kind of hold that arm up really high. So if you can avoid it, yes, absolutely avoid it. If it's unavoidable, then it is what it is. But yeah, if you're holding your iPhone, don't relax your hand too much. Any other questions on that?
No, I think we're good.
Perfect. So this is just a quick little running warm-up that I put together. I've actually got my brothers filmed it. So with the typical warm-up, we basically want to move through a few different phases of the warm-up, and I suppose the first phase is just kind of getting the body moving, a little bit of blood pumping around, opening up some of the different joints through the hips, the knees, the ankles, and you're starting to get those spring mechanisms happening through the calves and the hamstrings and glutes and everything like that. Once we're started to move a bit, we can move a little bit more through range of motion. So you saw he was reaching down to the ground and doing scoops, so you're getting a bit of active stretching through the hamstrings, and then a little bit of active stretching through the hips. Same thing again now for the quads. So basically you don't want to be holding any stretches for a prolonged period of time. You just want to move through most of your movements. And you're basically holding everything for short periods. So now just getting more into more running style stuff, and as you can see, he's coming up onto the toes with those. So getting that triple extension happening, which happens every time we kind of push off the ground. Don't stress too much about the technique of all these sort of things. You can
say that A skip is a pretty hard movement, Pat.
Yeah. So with this stuff, initially you can do all that preliminary range of motion stuff and warming up, and then you can just do some things like run throughs, grapevines, different things like that. The main thing is that we're kind of opening all the joints up, and then we're just increasing the intensity of our movement. So you can see that with all his movements, he's just gradually increasing the intensity. And then by the end, you'll see him doing some bounding, and I think he might do a couple of sprint run-throughs right at the end as well.
How long does a warm-up need to be more than just a good intention and actually a warm-up?
Yeah, I like to put aside 10 minutes. So that might be a walk, a power walk, or a really slow jog for 5 minutes, and then 5 minutes of running through drills like that. If you're at home, I've also got a bunch of at-home warm-up drills that you can do. So just a few little exercises that are nice and easy to do from your living room before you jump outside. I'd be, in the early stages, to be honest, guys, I'd be happy if you put 5 minutes into it. Like, I know it's a hard thing for people to do, but best case scenario, 10 to 15 minutes warm-up is awesome.
I'm going to give you a big shout out. If you are not already following Pat on any of his social media platforms, you need to, because all of this is there. These are resources available to you. You don't even have to remember or try and recall. You can just kind of look up his Instagram or whatever, and there are videos for you to just play along and do and remind yourselves.
And let me know, like message me on there as well, and just let me know if you ever want anything, because I've got like hours and hours of footage. So just let me know if there's anything specific that you want, and I've probably got it somewhere. If not, I can make a video for it. Alrighty. Any questions on the warm-up? No.
Nothing coming through, all good.
Cool. So next thing's running at the correct pace or intensity. So this is a big one that I notice people do early on. They'll get a program, and 2 of those sessions in the week will say something like there might be a shorter easy run and a longer easy run, and then there'll be something like a fartlek or a tempo or something like that in there. The issue that a lot of people have is running their easy runs too hard. So the easy run, you should be able, if you have someone next to you, you should be able to hold a conversation with them the whole time, which is pretty challenging for some people when they think about how hard they go in their easy runs. So next time even if you're by yourself, just have a little talk to yourself. But next time you're out on your easy runs, definitely give it a go. So especially like your longer ones, as you're increasing the distance of it, people will gradually build into it, and they'll find themselves going faster and faster towards the end. So even late in the run, just check yourself and go, am I running the right speed? Am I taking this easy? Because if you're going faster than you can still talk at, then you're probably starting to move out of your aerobic zone. So that's not really what you want to be training your longer and easy runs at.
One of the ways, sorry to jump in, Pat, one of the ways that I taught myself how to kind of monitor that was just to sing along to the chorus in each song that I was listening to. So every time the chorus came on, I didn't have to sing the whole chorus, but every time the chorus came on in that song, just try and get a few words out, and you can really gauge where you're at.
Absolutely. Everyone thinks you're a weirdo because you're talking to yourself in the streets, but other than that, it works a treat. And then the fartlek session, which Lena said, I think you've got one of those built in a week. Is that right?
Sure do.
Yeah. So that's when you get to really have a crack and test yourself. That's when you start to work on those anaerobic training principles, and really test out your body and see what it's capable of. And then your easy days are supposed to be easy. Is that a question just come through?
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. Someone's just saying that my heart rate is up at about 180 beats per minute for any type of run.
For any type of run. So your easy, I prefer people to do it by feel, but in general, an easy run, depending on your age and your heart rate max, an easy run should probably sit around like 140, 150 beats per minute.
Sorry, yeah, my heart rate is always skyrockets on any type of run, whether it's an easy run.
Yeah.
I'm very fit, so, and yeah.
It's really subjective, and it's going to be that talk test that's going to help you probably more than your heart rate in that case.
Yeah. Which is why I prefer I prefer doing it by feel, because they have set guidelines around heart rates and heart rate training principles, but it's so it changes so much person to person, and you can't pick someone who's 30 years old and tell them that this is going to be their heart rate during a certain session. It just doesn't work that way. We're all different, and we're all made different, and we respond differently to exercise. So you're better off doing it by feel and doing the talk test. Cool. Any other questions on that?
No, nothing coming through. We'll keep going.
Cool. I think this might be the last one. So this is your recovery. So train hard, recover harder. This is probably one of the big things that people miss. They're always thinking about their training, but the moment that their session stops, they'll just kind of wrap it up there, jump in their car, drive somewhere, and that's it. So you need to be considering a few of these things and how they impact the stress on your body. So number one is sleep. If you're not if you're not getting adequate sleep, and again, this is a subjective one, if you're not getting adequate sleep, then you're just not allowing your body to heal effectively. They say 6 to 8 hours is minimum what you need to allow your body to heal if you're strength training or aerobic training. But that I find that varies a little bit from person to person. Different people are night owls, and other people like to get up really early in the morning. So that one's a bit person to person. But the quality of sleep is important as well. So what are you doing before you're going to sleep? What are you eating, drinking before sleep? That'll all affect how well you sleep in the night, and as a result, how well you recover. And then the next thing is people don't consider work or life load, as well as the stress and anxiety that comes along with that, and how that impacts your ability to recover from sessions. And that's kind of one of the first questions that I'll ask people when they come in with an injury. What's work and life like at the moment? Because it has such a significant impact on pain. If all that stuff's heightened, then our nervous system is heightened, and it increases our pain receptors. So if we can keep all that at a low enough level, or at least work on it in some way, we're going to be improving our recovery between sessions, reducing our injury risk, and then if we are injured, we're going to be improving our recovery from that injury and reducing our pain whilst injured. Nutrition and hydration, that's a no-brainer. Just eating good food and making sure that you get enough water in before and after sessions. Working on your mobility, so whether that's setting aside 15 minutes a night for stretching and foam rolling, or it's seeing a myotherapist once every couple of weeks to get it worked on. It's definitely something that needs to be in the routine in some way, shape or form. And then lastly, listening to your body, which is kind of what we started on. Making sure that you're listening to all those little niggles that pop up along the way. Are you getting tighter than you usually would be at a certain time of night? Are you getting an increase in appetite, or are you losing your appetite? Little things like this tell us whether we're overtraining, whether we're moving towards an injury, all that sort of stuff. So just knowing what your body's norm is, and then listening to the abnormalities as they might pop up along the way, and chatting to someone about it when they do. Cool. And I think that's pretty much it. So any questions from everyone?
If you have anything that is specific to you guys, I recommend that you get in touch with Pat via his social media channels there. Let's see what you're saying to us, Taylor. Great question. Would you recommend running on different surfaces, treadmill, concrete, gravel, sand?
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. I personally like running on kind of 2 to 3 different surfaces throughout the week. So I'll generally do a session on grass around an oval. Sometimes I'll do a session on the track. Always do one on the trails. So that's kind of the dirt trails somewhere in the Otways, and then there's the kind of the gravel trails that are along the beach around the surf coast. So yeah, I'm always changing up surfaces, and I think it's an important thing to do. Our body reacts very differently to different surfaces, so it's good to get a bit of that, a few different surfaces within our training regime, so that our body is trained up on different areas. So like something like a treadmill, for example, has an impact on how our body loads. Like we have 20% higher loads through our Achilles when we're on a treadmill. So if that's the only running you're doing, then your calf and Achilles is going to be getting a lot more load than if you're running outside. So just sorts of things like that have an impact on how we tolerate load.
Yeah. The next question we've got, Pat, is about socks. And Steve actually bought some new shoes, 2 weeks ago, and got roped into buying socks that were like $30 a pair. And someone else is just wondering, is there actually, merit behind these expensive sock brands?
There is. There is. They're effective. There's a few different types. One of the local ones is Steigen. I think they're made in Geelong, and they're made of, I think they're like a nylon type material, and they're just super thin. They wick moisture away from the foot straight into the shoe, so that they're basically reducing friction between your skin and the shoe. A lot of the blisters that we get will be caused by moisture and friction or pressure. So if a sock can eliminate that for us, then absolutely worthwhile. But there's heaps of other ones, like I think there's Light Feet is Athlete's Foot's brand of sock. There's Beleaguer, Injiji. There's heaps of different ones that do all very similar sort of things. Some are just a little bit thicker than others, so I suppose it's just going with what feels good to you. As I said, the Steigens are quite lightweight and quite thin, whereas something like a Beleaguer trail sock is really thick. So depends what you like.
Any other questions to come through, guys? Like I said, if you've got something specific to you, or in your next run or your next training session, something pops up, please get in touch with Pat. Are you able to take appointments at the moment, Pat? What's going on with COVID?
Yeah, we're still in the clinic, and even the stage 4 lockdowns in Melbourne or the Allied Health are still in clinic, so I don't think we're at any risk of closing up. So any questions, just flick them through.
Lovely. Well, Pat, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate your effort and your energy and your contribution to this group. Guys, thank you for jumping in and showing your interest too. Did you want to finish on anything in particular, Pat?
Not really. Enjoy your running.
Yes.
I love people getting into their running, so enjoy it and do all the right things so that you can do it for as long as possible.
I say I'm teaching them just to hate running a little less. They don't have to love it, but let's just progress towards hating it a little less.
That sounds pretty good.
Alrighty, guys. Thank you so much. We'll see you online inside the training room group. And thank you so much for your time tonight.